Most people think they're broke because they're bad with money, lazy, undisciplined, impulsive. That's the story we're told. But what if the problem isn't you at all? What if there's a quiet system, so normal you never question it, designed to keep you right where you are? Not poor enough to revolt, not rich enough to escape, just stuck. Picture an average weekday morning. Alarm rings, you reach for your phone before your eyes fully open. Notifications, bills, news, prices going up. Somewhere in your chest, a low-level pressure turns on. That pressure never really turns off. You get ready, commute, coffee, work. 8 hours disappear, sometimes 10. You trade time for money, and the trade rate was set long before you showed up. This is where Average Joe exists. Not as a narrator, as a quiet figure in the background. Sometimes he's you. Sometimes he's the guy sitting 2 desks over. Sometimes he's not there at all because the system doesn't need him to be. Joe isn't failing, he's participating. Here's the first uncomfortable truth. The system doesn't need you broke. It needs you busy. Busy enough to not notice. Busy enough to blame yourself. From childhood, the path is simple. Go to school, follow rules, get good grades, get a safe job. No one explains money beyond basics. No one explains debt psychology. No one explains why wages crawl while prices sprint. You're handed tools, but not the manual. By the time Joe earns his first real paycheck, the system is already waiting. Rent takes a bite. Transportation takes another. Food costs more than he remembers. A small subscription here, another there. Nothing feels dangerous on its own. That's the trick. The system works best when it feels harmless. Joe tells himself, I'll save next month. I just need a raise. I'm almost there. Almost becomes a permanent place. Then comes credit, not as a villain, as a friend. Buy now, pay later. Build your credit score. Reward yourself. You deserve it. Debt doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like relief. And relief is addictive. Joe isn't reckless. He's human. When money feels tight, the brain shifts into survival mode. Short-term comfort beats long-term planning. That's not weakness, that's biology. The system knows this. That's why complexity is hidden behind friendly language, why interest is invisible at first, why minimum payments feel manageable. Joe keeps moving, working, paying, scrolling. He feels behind but can't explain why. Because nothing is wrong enough to panic, yet nothing is right enough to breathe. And that's the balance point. The quiet system doesn't shout, it hums. It doesn't trap you with walls, it traps you with routines. By the time Joe senses something is off, he assumes it's personal. I should be doing better by now. That thought is the system protecting itself, because if Joe blames himself, he never questions the structure. And that's where the real design begins. Because once you see how the system rewards just enough comfort and punishes curiosity, you can't unsee it. And Joe is about to notice something small that changes how everything looks. He starts noticing patterns. Not big ones, small, uncomfortable ones. Every time he gets a raise, life quietly gets more expensive. Rent climbs, groceries shrink, insurance adjusts. The extra money disappears before it ever feels real. At first, he assumes it's bad luck. Then he realizes something darker. The system doesn't just take your money, it times it. Raises come slowly, bills update instantly. It's like walking up an escalator that's always moving down. Joe tries to be responsible. He downloads budgeting apps, cuts back on takeout, cancels a few subscriptions. For a moment, it feels empowering. Then his car needs repairs, or a medical bill arrives, or a family emergency shows up unannounced. Months of discipline vanish in a single afternoon. That's when Joe feels it, the invisible ceiling. No matter how carefully he moves, he can't seem to rise, because the system isn't built around savings, it's built around spending. Every street, every app, every advertisement, they all whisper the same message: consume. Bright signs promise happiness, screams flash limited time offers. Algorithms learn Joe's weaknesses better than he knows them himself. Late at night, when he's tired and vulnerable, the deals feel personal. The system waits for exhaustion. Joe doesn't feel controlled. He feels free. That's the genius of it. He can choose any phone, any streaming service, any flavor of coffee. But the big choices were made long ago. Housing, healthcare, education, transportation. Those aren't marketplaces. They're toll booths. And Joe pays every time he passes through. Meanwhile, the clock never stops. Joe trades hours for dollars. But he never owns the hours. He wakes up already tired, goes to sleep thinking about tomorrow. Weekends become recovery zones. Vacations become logistical puzzles. Time itself feels rented. And here's where it gets psychological. When people feel financially trapped, they don't rebel. They shrink. They stop dreaming big. They stop taking risks. They aim for stability instead of freedom. Joe used to imagine starting something of his own. Now he just wants things to stop breaking. That's not ambition dying. That's survival taking over. The system loves that version of Joe. A Joe who plays defense. A Joe who avoids uncertainty. A Joe who stays predictable, because predictable people are easy to monetize. He notices how conversations at work sound the same. Everyone talks about rent, gas, groceries, weekend plans that don't cost much. Nobody talks about escape, not because they don't want to, because it feels unrealistic. And that's another quiet feature. When everyone around you is struggling, struggle feels normal. Joe scrolls through social media. People look happy, traveling, eating out, buying things. What he doesn't see are the balances behind the smiles. Comparison becomes another expense. Pressure builds silently. So Joe keeps going. He pays minimums, he hopes for promotions, he waits for someday. But someday never appears on the calendar. Then one evening, while staring at his bank app, Joe notices something strange. He's been moving non-stop for years, yet he's standing in the same place. That's when the question finally forms. If I'm working this hard, why am I still here? And that question is dangerous, because once you ask it, you start seeing the system not as background noise, but as architecture. And Joe is about to realize something even more unsettling. The system doesn't collapse when people struggle. It thrives. Joe doesn't have a dramatic breakthrough. No movie moment. No sudden wealth. No viral idea. Just a quiet realization. He starts tracing his own footsteps. Every paycheck flows out in the same directions. Every month follows the same rhythm. Income comes in, expenses rush out. Debt waits patiently in between. It's a loop. And loops don't break themselves. Joe notices how everything around him is optimized for motion, not progress. Escalators, autopay, one-click purchases. Friction has been removed from spending, but added to saving. Try canceling something. Try disputing a charge. Try understanding a medical bill. Suddenly, everything becomes complicated. That's not accidental. Easy in, hard out. Joe finally sees it. The system isn't designed to make you rich, it's designed to make you reliable. Reliable workers, reliable consumers, reliable debt payers. People who show up, swipe cards, renew subscriptions, and repeat. The system doesn't need evil intentions, it just needs momentum. Generations pass through the same tunnels. School to job, job to bills, bills to credit, credit to stress. Most people never zoom out far enough to notice the pattern, because they're too busy surviving inside it. Joe looks around and realizes something heavier. Everyone is tired. Cashiers, drivers, office workers, parents. A quiet exhaustion hangs in the air. Not burnout. Something deeper. Financial fatigue. When life becomes a series of payments instead of possibilities, that's when people stop asking big questions. And that's the real danger. Not poverty, silence. Joe understands now. The system doesn't lock doors. It distracts.
It keeps you chasing comfort while quietly taxing your future. It teaches you to feel grateful for stability, even when stability feels like a cage. Joe remembers how, as a kid, adults talked about owning homes, starting businesses, retiring early. Now his generation talks about side hustles just to breathe. That shift didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly, policy by policy, price by price, loan by loan. So quietly that nobody announced it. Joe also realizes something else. The system only works when people think their situation is personal, when they blame habits instead of structures, choices instead of incentives, character instead of design. Once Joe sees that, the shame loosens its grip. He isn't broken, he's navigating a maze built to look like a straight road. That doesn't mean escape is easy. It just means the story changes. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" Joe starts asking, "What is this environment training me to do?" That question alone creates space. Not freedom, space. And space is where awareness lives. Joe doesn't quit his job. He doesn't sell everything. He simply stops sleepwalking. He pays attention. He notices fees. He notices patterns. He notices how often fear is used to sell him comfort. That's the beginning. Not riches, not rebellion, awareness. Because systems lose power the moment they become visible. And maybe that's the quiet truth they never advertise. Not that you're bad with money, but that you were raised inside a machine and taught to blame yourself for its outputs. Joe walks home that evening, the same way he always does. Same sidewalk, same traffic noise. But everything feels different. Not lighter, clearer. And clarity is dangerous to any system built on autopilot.
If this story made you think, do me a small favor. Hit like. It helps this reach people who need it. Share it with a friend who's feeling stuck right now. And subscribe to Average Joe Invests for more real money stories like this. Also, drop a comment. Tell me what part hit you the hardest or what you'd like to see next. I read everyone. See you in the next story.